was a caterer and I was catering at Aberdeen University, and then I came down to Strathclyde and ran further education colleges, and then that grew into all the schools in Strathclyde, which is 1,800 schools and about 500 other places. And then latterly in East Ayrshire Council, where I did some work which was about localising the food chain for schools. So rather than buying off large, fairly anonymous national contracts, I used a local farmer for beef, lamb and pork, a local dairy for milk and dairy produce, an artisan cheesemaker for cheese, a local bakery and so on. And that was a very successful project on many levels. And I was asked to come to the Scottish Government and help inform the food policy. And that was about 4 years ago. And I feel it's a real privilege to have been involved in that work and see the progress of the food and drink policy. I think we can argue about whether it's good, whether it's delivering all that we hope, but what I can tell you is that within the Scottish Government, as an independent person, I see real ambition for food and drink, and food and health, and food and education, and food and the environment, and all these different aspects. So it's encouraging, or I certainly feel it's encouraging. So I'll cover a little bit of industry stuff and a little bit of food and drink policy. If you're going to throw things, remember, I'm not really a civil servant, I'm a caterer. Food and drink, I think, is a kind of success story. Time's short, so I'll not dwell on that, but they've increased their growth, they've increased their turnover target to 16.5 billion. That's a lot of money for a nation of 5 million people. It's probably one of the few sectors in Scotland that's actually booming. Exports 50%, number of employees with 21%. Retail sales of Scottish brands UK have risen by 36%. Downside, there's a relatively low spend on research and development compared to other countries. And the food and drink sector, the food and beverage sector, needs to be able to adapt to changing health trends and behaviours. And of course, we recognise today the Scottish paradox that we produce world-class food and drink. And I often wondered if that's a myth. It's what top chefs say, and it's what politicians say, and it's what producers say. But I was privileged to have lunch with Albert Roux about a fortnight ago, and I asked him, and he probably changed catering in the UK and the quality of catering in the UK. And he certainly believes in terms of our seafood, our shellfish, our beef and our lamb. Yes, these are fairly obvious things, our salmon. But he says that even the soil that we have in Scotland and how the vegetables that we produce and the fruit and the berries that produce out of that soil are just exceptional. So I'll believe him, because I like to. But significant challenges remain. So we have some of the highest levels of diet-related disease in the world, deep-seated attitudes to undervaluing food, I would say. I'm surprised this afternoon that we haven't touched on the global threats to food security and why it's not an option. We need to change what we're doing now. We need to change the diet, and really we're selling Scotland short if we don't understand that these challenges are there in the future. Lack of diversity in exports and supply chains, okay. And food waste is about 20% estimated in Scotland, which is pretty much similar to most countries. Okay, so we've got food policy. Okay, we established that, and we're going through the second evolution of that policy. And the key thing is that it must be rooted as a partnership in society and industry. It's not a government policy that's not organic and connected and well connected. And so there's a very bold vision, and the consultation on that has just been analysed. There's huge support for that vision, and there's some criticism too, but fundamentally there's huge support for that vision. Incidentally, one of the things that came out more strongly than we thought it would is the issue of food poverty. I think we need to understand, policymakers and local government need to understand that food is one way of producing a multiple dividend for the environment, for health, for employment, and so on. And it needs to be looked at in these terms, rather than food is something fairly inconvenient that happens in schools, something that's necessary in hospitals, but it's not core activity. And I think we really need to revalue food. The priorities, I think, in this next phase of the food policy coming out of the consultation and set out in the document are public food as an exemplar, a children's food policy, which will cover some of the human right to food stuff that was talked about by Pete and others this morning, but also touched on by Peter in terms of, why should really we go into a restaurant and the children's menu is chicken nuggets, beef burger, fish fingers. I mean, why? What are we actually saying to children when that's the... So I think there needs to be a change within the hospitality industry for that. Local food, good food choices, sustainable economic growth, and the Food Commission, which Pete touched on as well. That Food Commission will not be a commission with executive powers. It won't have a huge budget. It's more an expert group, a reference group, to take the policy forward, not to create a new policy, but to take the policy forward, and to use Pete's excellent network and other people's excellent networks to disseminate the food policy, make sure that it's connected with the grassroots. I just touched on that. There's within the government, if the SME wants to do something within their business, there are grants available, but you'll see that's tied into health benefits is one of the key criteria, environmental benefits and so on. If you look at the various reports, this is what the private sector see as the top three food challenges: sustainability, economic climate, and healthier eating. They see them as the key survival. This is if anyone heard me speak before, I've probably used this slide because it just brings so much into the one slide. Okay, so the red line is talking about profitability and margins. Okay, so at the farm gate, that's the most profitable. Once you go onto mail order and internet, it'll be more complicated. It's less profitable, and then it goes down to multiples in supermarket and the public sector. Margins very, very tight. Now the complexity of each of these increases as well. The farmer takes his produce to the farm, great, that's simple. He's got to organise his mail order facility, a lot more complicated, going down to wholesale, multiples in supermarket and so on, where it gets very, very, the distribution and dealing in that business is very difficult. So we shouldn't be simplistic about how we talk about SMEs in Scotland and industry and farmers and producers and so on, because we do sometimes, I think, assume that they should all be doing more business with supermarkets, they should all be doing more business with the public sector. But it's not as straightforward as that. They really need to understand what their business plan is about and what they're comfortable doing as businesses. So one size doesn't fit all. This was just saying what are shoppers prepared to pay a bit extra for, so high quality, foods free range, locally produced. That's what people say they're prepared to pay for, whether that's reality or not. And then the other side, supply chain relationships. Basically, what farmers and food producers are saying there is it's about survival to them. So they need a secure market for production. They want a premium price for what they produce. And they want good feedback on what they produce. They want support for meeting sustainability criteria. So really what they're saying is it's about survival for me, and it needs to be demand driven, and you need to make it easier for me if I'm going to bring about change. This is just public sector, and really what I'm saying there is that catering, food and drink suppliers dominate, but there's lots of other suppliers involved in supplying schools and so on as well. But the figure for, if you look to the grocery bill or the supermarket bill in Scotland, it's about 11 billion is what we spend in groceries in supermarkets. What the public sector spends in schools and hospitals and prisons and so on is 150 million. So it's about 1.3% or something. So we're talking about change and change in what we're eating and change in what we're producing and to be more environmentally friendly and healthy and so on, then yes, we can use the public sector, schools, hospitals, and try and make them an exemplar of what it should be, but it's not them that's driving the market because it's only about 1.5%. Just finishing, last slide. So I thought this was a reasonable example of, because this all happened in May and June last year, so you've got all these challenges: culture change, sustainable procurement, health, environment, challenges for the food system, bringing that to people's attention. And these were all, to some extent, spawned out of food and drink policy along with health and along with the learning directive and so on. Got primary 1 to 3 free school meals, so that's, you could argue that's a sort of poverty type thing. Better eating, better learning, really trying to get children to understand why we need to change what we're eating. Beyond the school gates, looking at the public health duty of local authorities, explaining to them what their powers are. Coming to information we talked about, and supporting healthy choices, which is a framework for grocers and retailers, and trying to make sure that they've got healthier food. Thank you very much.